What's up, Ocean? We're here today crashing Matt's apartment, hanging up scrolls, and recording discussion videos just like Matt does. In all seriousness though, I got the idea from Matt to record a discussion video. We just finished streaming our second black and white stream for Blaze Black and Volt White. So we're here today discussing why I stopped uploading draft content. So if you guys do enjoy this and are curious, leave a like below and subscribe. Let me know if you have any other topics you'd like to see me discuss in a less edited sort of fashion. I know I've been trying to do a lot more edited content lately, but it takes a bit of time, and especially with work being busy, this week I just particularly felt like it was probably in my best interest to just do something easy. I missed my VGC upload, and I'll get into that in a bit, well actually, I'll get into that now. I guess that mostly just came because I had a headache after I streamed with Matt last night, and I ran out of time. I tried to get up really early this morning, but the Advil PM I took last night just made me really tired for some reason, so I slept, and I kept sleeping, and I just forgot to record, so yeah, I just didn't get it up in time. So with that in mind though, let's get into the actual topic today though. Why I stopped uploading draft? So there are a few different points. Just like Matt does, I put a few bullets. I tried recording a version of this earlier, but I lost track of where I got to in the conversation. So I think the bullet points are fine. I'm just not going to script it because I want to just sort of go freeform and not edit. So with that said though, I'm going to first go over the bit of the backstory to this, because I feel like a lot of people are going to assume that this probably happened like after the BDSP league for Pseudo Draft League, when it happened a lot sooner than that. And to be fair, that big reason that I stopped uploading Draft League was because of the biggest reason I would say is because of burnout. And it's specifically burnout with the content I was making. And I feel like at this point, I've sort of done what I can with Draft League, at least as far as things currently go. And I feel like there's a few reasons for this. One, obviously, I mean, part of it sure is, like, I can maybe do a bit more editing and a bunch of other factors that can go into it. And that's not entirely wrong. I feel like I can, increase the level of my content. But as far as what I can bring to the table, truly, I think I'd hit at least enough of a plateau. Like, I can probably go up, a couple more flights of stairs. But I feel like I've hit at least the tier that I can get to at this point with, which is the content I can at least, what I can put into the content more so, less so that I'm editing, more so in the information of what I'm bringing unique, I guess. I think it's a bad way to put it, because obviously, I can do a lot more editing, for sure, there's not a doubt about that, but I feel like in something that specifically would justify me doing draft over someone else, I feel like I brought what I can to the table. I've been recording draft, to put in perspective, since about 2015, I want to say. It was whatever the October or November was before RS, and I'm almost certain that was 2015. Not before RS, before Sun and Moon. Point is though, it's been a lot of time, and I get, I haven't always been recording draft, but I did typically at least did a draft video once a month for most parts. There were some spaces obviously, but for most months I at least did a draft video a month, and in fact more cases than not at least a draft video a week. But the point is though, I've done hundreds of draft videos, and maybe even 1,000 at this point. I genuinely couldn't tell you. But it's a lot, because most of the time as well, I was doing multiple draft leagues, especially once Sun and Moon started. I was usually doing 2 or 3 at once, if not even more at a couple points. So I've done a lot. I've hit a lot of the ceilings that the community has ever had. For example, GBA D League, I was in that way back when, if you guys remember the Calgary Infernape, that was what I used to go by. Also, I've done APA, like big APA Wi-Fi, which to be fair, was at a bit smaller of a point, and I was sort of at my peak on my old channel. So, I did that too. I've done GBA analyst work. I've done WBE analyst work, which is a whole fucking basket case. I'm not getting it. I don't care how many people want to see that video. I'm not getting into that ever. I don't think. It's just not a can of worms I want to reopen. But point is though, is that I've done a lot of different stuff, draft, both analyzing, post-com, live-com, you name it. I've done a lot of different draft stuff. I feel like I've sort of hit what I can. Even with discussion videos, I've dabbled in a bit of draft discussion videos. I still even did a draft discussion video very recently. And this isn't to say I won't do draft discussion videos anymore. I kind of enjoy those still to a degree. But I don't know how regular they'll be, to be fair. They'll be when I have the desire to do one. I did the Pult one mostly just because I thought it was an interesting topic and something that I feel like a lot of people just genuinely have a bad take on with Pult. So I wanted to do that. But in general, I mean, it's just not something I feel like I have enough that I really want to, that I both want to and can bring to the table in a meaningful way. So I got burnt out doing that. And in June, I took in July, I should say, this happened around June to be fair, like around the midway through June when I uploaded my How to Use Glidescore video. So I sort of continued that, and I thought at first it was just a burn up content, but I realized it was specifically draft because I wanted to upload other things. I just didn't want to upload draft anymore. So around July 2nd was the last time I uploaded until October 6th. And around early October, I planned to, come back to uploading. I took my time off. I got my funk out. But I made a promise to myself that at the very least, until I can get at least 50% of a month uploaded, didn't want to bring back draft content. And the biggest reason being is that I wanted to get comfortable uploading again without doing draft, and I wanted to see if that fixed my issue, because I thought that there was a good chance my issue could have just been with draft content, which I figured out it was. And to be fair, I got burnt out doing other things too, but I feel like the burnout level was very different. Well, similar and different, I should say, and I'll get into that. But the big reason being, though, is that I didn't want to do draft because I was putting in like 2.5 hours just into the video side of things on a good week, between thumbnail, tag and title research, the minimal amount of editing I did, team builder slides, etc. You name it. And that doesn't even include building a team, which some weeks took anywhere from like about 40 minutes per team to a couple hours depending on the week. So like it was a lot of time we'd be putting in just for one video that would get about 100, 150 views. On a good week, maybe 200 or 300. So didn't really feel like doing that. And I just didn't think that the result was worth the time putting in. Especially with how slow the growth was. I thought there just wasn't much there. I think that Matt sort of hit the miracle of breaking 1,000 off of main draft content. That's such an irregular thing. Like literally since for coaches that weren't like GBA or WB, well, WB wasn't even really draft, like made for draft specifically, I should say. Like the people in that, besides a couple like Uzi and Otto, were not draft focused creators. They were creators that happened to do draft. But that's besides the point. Besides like GBA though, and a couple case exceptions, Matt is one of the only people to really build himself like from the ground up without like a true, like push from someone else to make 1,000. And that's not to say, Matt didn't get help along the way, because obviously, like collabs help a lot. I collabed with Matt a bit when I was a little bit bigger than he was, which isn't the case anymore, obviously. But when I was on my old channel, I collabed with Matt a bit, and Matt and I bounced off each other. It wasn't just me, giving Matt stuff, because clearly that would be very misrepresentative. Matt and I helped each other a lot, both in DMs with improving each other's quality, and also with just sharing audience with each other. Obviously there were other people, but as a whole though, Matt's probably one of the biggest grassroots draft creators, I would say. Because like, for example, obviously Matt wasn't in like a WBE or like a GBA. Like even I at least got GBA D-League, which was a huge push for my audience. But like Matt didn't really have that. I think that Matt's biggest thing was quite literally APA season 6. But at that point, APA well past its prime, and so did draft as content past its prime by then. Which I guess if anyone wants to know when I think that prime was, it was probably right, like I would say the last point the draft was truly in its prime was somewhere between start of Sword and Shield GBA and a couple months, like 2 months after GBA's last season, I would say, was that window. But even then, you could argue the draft went down before then, which is fair, I would agree. But I would say that was when it was out of its like truly like prime tier, I would say, like the S tier. Well, not even S tier, I would say like A tier. I don't think draft ever hit S tier, truthfully. As enjoyable as it is to play and record, never really hit S tier. It's still in the A tier, but it sort of left that tier entirely like a couple months after GBA. That's not really, I think, anyone's specific fault. Like, obviously, quality could be a lot better for sure. That's undeniable, but it can be at any level. Even the best people always find room to improve, because otherwise, if they're not growing, they're sinking. They're dying, I should say. If you're not growing, you're dying inherently. So with that in mind, obviously, obviously quality could improve for sure. But I think in terms of just viewers being bored of seeing draft content, there's only so much that could be done at this point, because at a certain point, you just run out of ways to really show off the same sort of types of content, I should say. Like, for example, I can only bring Clefable to so many games and use it in so many different ways, whether it's Calm Mind, defensive, specs, whatever set you want to bring. Whatever set you want to bring, I'm certain at the very least someone has done it before in a draft game. Whether it's in a serious game or not, whether it's in an upload game or not, someone has definitely done it by now. And that's at any level of valuability in the set. Whether it's like, belly drum clef or like a specs Clefable, like even in I'm mentioning like lower end sets typically for clef, because to prove the point. Like I've done a belly drum clef, for example, against Leo in GBA D-League. It was a meme game, obviously, so it wasn't some try-hard game or anything. So maybe someone could bring it to a legit game and have a legit reason to bring it. Who knows? But the point being, though, is that someone has definitely done it by now. So you're inherently not going to bring something new to the table, I feel like, in my opinion. At least not, maybe new to the upload space, but not new to the draft table at this point. The format's been going on for so long with such little to change between it. Because at the very least, if we were to compare this to, let's say, like a VGC. VGC format updates at least yearly, and recently it's been even more, but to be fair, that's because of less IRL tournaments. But point being though, is that VGC's format updates at least yearly, so there's always something new to bring to the table. With draft, it's really just when games come out, and even then, not every game is going to bring something new. For example, Horus brought a few new megas, and that was about it. It only changes the format so much though. BDSP just brought a new cut of moves, and even still, it's a lot less Pokemon to draft. On top of that, timer's a lot worse. So in that respect, for specifically Wi-Fi, it's not as viable of a format. But the general point being though, is that draft changes at a much slower pace. VGC, especially, even still has a lot more games happening. So the more games that happen, the more people will need to adapt to certain things. With draft, you just don't get that because you can adapt to certain Pokemon being drafted or maybe certain Pokemon finding new usage. But at a certain point, people have done something and realized if it works or doesn't work in some way, shape, or form. Whether you're talking about just in the upload space or the showdown space, it's been done probably at this point, at least to varying degrees of success, to be fair. But it's probably been done, unless you're talking about like really ratchet, like like Bagon level Pokemon in Standard Draft League. But anything that could be used to even a 1% successful degree, I would say, has probably been done by now. So I generally just didn't think I had anything to offer, and I wanted to challenge myself to just try and break away. And that lasted for a bit. I had met my requirement in November, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to do one BDSP draft league because it's free uploads for Wi-Fi battle, as it's starting to become a bit harder to do Wi-Fi battles, or at least to find consistent ones. So I wanted to do that. So luckily, this came at around a time when right before the generation, and this is the big reason I even thought of this. Right before the generation, I decided that I would give one BDSP draft league a chance and see how it went. And this was mostly because Marcus came to me, actually. My good pal CB Marcus. For anyone who is not in the BBL Showdown, the BBL server, I recommend you join. It's a great community if you're looking for a Showdown Draft League, actually. I'll take the quick ad break here to plug that BBL, as of the time of this upload, has officially plugged our second BBL tournament for Showdown. And it's a really fun time if you want to try an Uber's Draft League, if you want to try a Showdown Draft League, if you just want to try anything, it's a fun event, in my opinion, the BBL hosts, and we have a cash prize, obviously. It's probably gonna be $100, maybe $150. I'm not sure, but it'll be at least $100 broken up among top 4. If we go to 200, it'll be top 8, but I'm unsure entirely of that. It'll depend. Point being though, is sign up. Links down below. But with that said though, Marcus, absolute go. He came to me with a way to optimize making team builder slides, and this was mostly because of the fact that Marcus wanted to do this for a league that he was building it for, being Prep City. I'm assuming that Marcus has at least told them that he planned to make this film. I don't know how. I'm assuming it got to them at this point being. But regardless of, Marcus wanted to make this as a gift to the league for helping him record games, which was really sweet. I like the cause. I do a bit more about Photoshop. I know a decent amount about Photoshop, so I helped Marcus with this. And we realized a way to make this work, and I asked Marcus, hey, is there any way that you can maybe help me set something up that could work for team builder slides, for Wi-Fi battles? And also, he was already doing for drafts, so I wanted to do it for Wi-Fi battles too. Which was, truthfully, Marcus is the reason, I would say. I can attribute this to a lot of things, Bird obviously supplied teams, but I guess to the anti-point is I could have technically gotten teams from anywhere. Now, Bird, to be fair, gave me a lot of good quality teams and got a lot of wins for us. That is undeniable. But in the end, I would not have even recorded as much as I did during BDSP if not for Marcus supplying the thing to make my slides as efficient. So Marcus definitely got us to 1,000. He pretty much set up my channel away from draft, which was great because I felt like my identity as a content creator might have been locked in draft, which I feel like is not the case. It still does well, but I no longer feel like I need to be uploading draft to be doing at least okay. And to be fair, draft is better than some of my vids have been doing recently. I won't deny that, but I feel like I can at least somewhat viably upload something else now and have it not be draft because Marcus got me that, and I appreciate that a lot from Marcus. So with that in mind, though, I felt I did my time away, and I wanted to try at least a single draft league to get some more Wi-Fi in. And when I tried that, I sort of came to a conclusion. Even though I had the time saved from team builder slides, which was really worth it. Marcus, to put it in perspective, I can do a full set of team builder slides in about 2 minutes now. With the full team builder slides, it's 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. Whereas before, it would take me about 25 to 30 minutes to do a full matchup, etc. But Marcus was 100% the entire reason for that. Because of the way that he automated the system through Google Docs, because he's a fucking genius. So that's really all there is to say to that. But Marcus was sort of the reason I even tried the BDSP Draft League, and I tried it, and I enjoyed playing BDSP. I didn't even really hate the format too much, to be fair. I love my team. The issue being, though, is that I felt like, and this happened week 3, actually, with the game that never went up. I've alluded to this at least a little bit in the past, but the game, and I think I mentioned this on a couple of videos, but the point is I played mid for my week 3 game, that I never uploaded. It was supposed to go up New Year's. But I ultimately decided the game just was not worth uploading for a couple of reasons. One, at this point, the league had died. It was just about dead. No one was really scheduling games. I could have probably played AML, to be fair, but we were already going to be playing after this video would have went up anyway, and no one was really playing scheduling games anymore, because like half the people just lost interest, and there was not enough people to really replace that point. And replacing half the league is tough. It's hard enough to replace a couple people in Wi-Fi, especially for a more niche format. So I felt like it was just not worth to replace. The league died. And two, because even though I had that free Wi-Fi battle, I just chose not to upload it. And I literally didn't even upload a vid that day, because I just didn't think that the vid was going to be good. Because the battle came down to me haxing mid pretty badly, and also bringing it to timer to win off of said hacks. Because he won even with the hacks happening, as long as the game finished out, definitively speaking. But I thought it was just a very unenjoyable game, pretty much just kicking mid down after being down between the hacks into the timer, and then also protect stalling to ensure diff at that point in case it mattered for playoffs. It really was an unenjoyable content experience in my personal opinion. So, and I didn't think there was any amount of editing I could have done to make that more enjoyable. Post-com, trimming up with edits, you name it. Thought it was just a terrible video. And this was a not upload required league, to be fair. But even if I was to, let's say, not upload every draft game, at that point there's holes in your season, and it defeats, in my opinion, a lot of the value of a draft league being a finished series. It's the same reason you don't watch a Let's Play and then all of a sudden you see that your favorite creator didn't upload episode 7. That's just not how Let's Plays work. And it's similar to draft league, it's a different thing, but without uploading the full thing, what's the point of that? Because why would someone go back and watch your run if they can't watch week 3, 7, 8, and 9? What's the point? Because then, they saw 5 of your games of the 9 weeks in that instance, let's say. But where are the other 4? What happened in those games? It's missing part of the story of how you got there. And even if they know, oh, you made playoffs. Yeah, that's great. But what happened in those weeks? Whether win or lose, they're just missing, and it devalues the whole run for future uploads, in my opinion. So I didn't really like the obligation, or even it not upload required leagues, just the obligation to the format that you're uploading for, or even just to the series, I guess, if you're gonna put it that way. And I didn't really like that. So truthfully, I feel like that's a huge point against draft league that a lot of people seem to miss. Some games just inherently will not be good to watch. They can, obviously I get, playing to win, and to be fair as well, playing specifically in a way that is, while it is more enjoyable to watch, less unenjoyable to watch, I should say, but knowing it is an inherent loss doing so is definitely also going to turn people off, because playing in a specific way that is throwing your battle is definitely going to piss some people off. You're gonna, it's really a lose-lose, because if I, let's say in that instance, I forfeit the game, at that point, or even just start attacking Pokemon to make it end on timer when mid should have probably won anyway. In that instance, I'm pissing off the people that I am trying to get the win when I had it set up in front of me, being the hacks, which was my win there, and hacks and timer. If I went to the timer, I'm upsetting people who say, oh, mid would have won if I finished the game. And that's fine. That's fine. You're not going to please everyone in the internet. I get that. But uploading something inherently knowing that I'm going to, no matter how I do the game, piss off people, I feel like at that point, I get knowing that people aren't going to be happy with every video you put out, but uploading something will not be enjoyable, I feel like it's definitely missing the ball there, in my opinion. And I get that, I could edit it, I could post comment, I could do whatever, but in the end, what happened that game still happened that game. And some games are just like that with draft, I feel like, in my opinion. With the Wi-Fi battle, if I record an unenjoyable Wi-Fi battle, I could just do another one with the team. No one will ever know. Now, to be fair, I will blanketly admit I have done that before. They're mostly with games when I'm playing people who've brought their in-game teams. There are a couple I have not, where the hacks is absurd, whether in my favor or against my favor. But typically it is against in-game teams, because I stopped doing it after a couple, because it just got too bad. Like with Dig Luxrays, for example, and stuff like that. Like really absurdly bad stuff. Or like Growl Staraptors to the extreme degrees. I can just record another one though. Same as for Road to Ranked. You guys don't see every game that goes into it, whether it's a win or a loss. Like, for example, I'll pull up the Cali Ice one right now. I went 8-2 for the night recording. I went 8-3 for the entire night. I didn't record the first one. Well, I forfeit midway through the first game because I was resizing my OBS windows to face forward while I was recording my game. And I saw the screen glitching, and I was like, oh, fuck. I don't know if this is going to carry into the footage or not. So I just cut the recording right there. and I just forfeit the game to, not record a midway through battle. So I went 8-3 for that entire night, and I showed like one of my losses, and I showed like 3 of my wins of the 8. So it's not even a matter of, showing wins or losses. It's a matter of just showing good games. And I can do that with Road to Ranked. I can do that with Wi-Fi battles. With leagues, though, if I don't do that, you're missing the story there. And, well, you're missing the purpose of the league, which is the collab and showing the full run. With Road to Ranked, it's about showing steps. Because obviously, if I was to show, like, the hundreds of battles it takes to Master Ball, it's a bit of a different experience. So I feel like, personally, in my opinion, even with a series like that, it's a bit different of the purpose of watching it, because the purpose of Road to Ranked is to get to Master Ball. The purpose of Draft League is the individual matchups, because individually, even if you're not in call together, it is still collabing with each individual person. And if someone else, like let's say, for example, if I battled Owen in a draft game, he's uploading his side. If I'm not, it looks a lot worse for me. In general, just for the league, to be fair, like for myself, but it looks especially bad if Owen's uploading his side and I'm not, because it looks like I'm specifically avoiding it. So I feel like with that in mind, it definitely is a bit of a thing like that. And I feel like it's that mental obligation, I guess is the best way to put it. But even still, there are a lot of other issues. That's just the big one. And I feel like with BDSP and VDC at the very least, which is the next, I guess, talking point, but I kind of blurred it in, is the very least, again, I can choose to stop this whenever I want. There's no real obligation layer to cut to the series. I guess with Road to Ranked, that kind of is, to be fair. Because, if I just give up at, like, Ultra Ball or something, then clearly at that point, it's, again, incomplete. But like with Wi-Fi battles, especially for BDSP, when I stop those, I stop those. They're one and done instances. Each story is told in that video, and that's it. It's not a recurring thread like a Let's Play or like a league, etc. The story's done. Road to Ranked, you can kind of make the case, but it's still like when I finish it, I'm finished. I can get to Master Ball and then I'm ranked. So that's the goal. To be fair, I'll definitely be playing past because I love the VGC format right now, especially learning it. But that's the point, is once I get to Master Ball, I can stop whenever I want. I can continue playing to 1, I can continue playing to 43 for all I care. Once I get to Master Ball, though, I'm officially ranked. So I can be done. And I feel like with Draft League, though, you're sort of sticking it through for the entire set, in my personal opinion. And to be fair, that's not the only issue I have with Wi-Fi Draft. There's a lot of other things. And I'll quickly mention, I guess, because I didn't touch on why I just don't upload Showdown Draft then. Because, Showdown Draft, it's not as much that I need to do. I can upload it whenever. They're not upload required leagues at the very least. Even if it's missing stuff, I can always highlight it together, let's say, or whatever. And I think the biggest reason for that is just because I have a bad habit of clicking the skip turn button. And I don't like post-commenting either. I hate post-commenting. I did it on a stream for BBL Finals, to be fair, and that was mostly just to show off that we have a Showdown format. And it was around the time when people were, like trying to mention commentating other games you weren't playing and all that. And I wanted to show off the Showdown scene, because I felt like personally in that discussion that people made it seem like all of Draft was dying. When I would argue Showdown is doing better than it's ever been, or at the very least, to be fair, it's been riding that since probably DPL's inception, I would argue, but it's probably at least, I would argue, still, it's probably just below the level it was when TTM tours existed at this point, which is pretty close to its peak, I would say. It's up there. It's still doing great. Showdown has enough people where it will probably last a few years past wherever Wi-Fi does, in my personal opinion. And I felt like, I want to show that off, because I think that Showdown is where I've been finding my enjoyment recently. Even if I'm not uploading it, I'm still playing Showdown. I'm literally going to be playing in the tournament I just plugged earlier for BBL. And I also like the community a lot better. This goes into one of my big issues with Wi-Fi. And I've been saying this for years at this point, and I think that, truthfully, I got the point off of Owen. I'm almost certain it was Owen that brought this up to me. But it's a really good point. It's that Wi-Fi Draft is like a business interaction. You go to someone, you say, hey, we play this week, when do you want to play? You set a time on Sunday at 11 p.m. because no one knows how to schedule it any other time, and the people that say they do are the people that have 3-hour availability and it's not on Sunday. So scheduling is always a bitch for Wi-Fi, especially. It's a lot. I feel like with Showdown there's hit or miss, to be fair. There's definitely hit or miss, but I feel like I've had a lot worse issues on Wi-Fi, especially with people wanting to extend games. I feel like it happens, from my personal point of view, more on Wi-Fi, but to be fair, maybe I'm just missing something. But from my personal point of view, that's how I feel about the scheduling thing. Regardless, I feel like, though, that it's really like you play the game, then it goes up, sometimes you'll set a time to mutually upload it, but at this point that's sort of a done practice. At this point people will just upload whenever, and then you're done with it. You don't really acknowledge the person again unless you play in playoffs or for a rematch, in very, very rare instances these days, but typically doesn't happen anymore. And you're pretty much done. You don't acknowledge the game again, unless if, it comes up for some reason, like maybe that game put someone in playoffs and you need to fight for a spot, but typically you don't mention the game again after that point. It's just done. And you'll play the person in probably like 3 other leagues in the next couple months, and then another season will start, another rotation of leagues, etc. And at that point, like, it just, you're playing the same really small group of people who can upload, in those cases for the upload required leagues, the people who can upload, people who want to upload for Wi-Fi, and also the people who will probably be doing like 3-4 Wi-Fi leagues at once, or even just 2 or 3, let's say, in a good amount of cases these days, to be fair. But the point is, though, is that it's a lot of the same circulation of people, and it's not really that meaningful. If you go into a lot of Wi-Fi leagues, and to be fair, this isn't everyone. I know that for a fact it is not every Wi-Fi league, but a lot of Wi-Fi leagues. Typically, you'll see after like the first couple weeks, the general chats for those will die. Whereas I feel like at least for BBL and other showdown leagues, they've built like actual communities, like full-on communities, even outside of the leagues having seasons. For example, Hive hasn't had a season in over a year. The community is still more alive, I think, than every single Wi-Fi league I've ever played in. It just changed. BBL, even in its off seasons, albeit not as much during its off seasons, to be fair, but even its off seasons still has discussion in chats. Again, not as much, but there's the community still is there, and it will still come back when the league comes back. It will still be there, even for the people that aren't playing in the league. Still interact. Again, not everyone, but still people. For Wi-Fi, you just don't see that, though, in my personal point of view. And besides like a couple rare instances, and even still, I feel like with Wi-Fi as well, a lot of people put on a really pretty smile, and you know, I think I'm gonna go a bit weeb for a second, but you wouldn't be watching this if you didn't. But lies are pretty powerful, I will say. You know, realistically, I feel like a lot of the community puts on a lie to, you know, show the best they can to their audience. It's an act that's put on. You don't see everything. For example, I think Matt and I were talking about this actually in our first Black and White stream. But Matt, typically, he said that he's not as energetic as a person as he is. He puts on the extra energy for the video, and I mean, I do too. I don't talk a lot. I don't like talking to people unless I'm very, very close with them, like extremely close with them. I don't like talking a lot in front of people, but I record a lot. I love recording a lot. I'm also not I'm not nearly as articulate as I am for videos, which sounds like I'm already not. If you've been watching the full 27 minutes of this now, I don't know how anyone would think I am, but I'm even worse when I'm not recording. I'll give it that much. So I feel like it's just a lot of things, you know, people put on a face for. I smile more when I'm recording. I talk a lot more up when I'm recording. So it's stuff like that. So I feel like, you know, in whatever aspect it is, people always have a recording voice or recording personality they have, and they have the other personality they have. And a lot of people don't see that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think the difference is, though, is that a lot of the things the community that is viewing draft content doesn't see is a lot of really toxic situations. And I get that, you know, not the entire draft community is bad, but I think a lot of people like to act like it's cleaner than it is. And that's not necessarily, I would say, I can't really blame it on like a specific person. I can't act like I'm innocent of it, but it is definitely a big community issue, I would say. People not being upfront with who they like or dislike, people, you know, pretending like they're on good terms with other people acting like, you know, there's nothing going wrong. And I can go into countless examples of this, but I'm really not trying to drag other people's situations through the mud. If you want to comment yours down below, feel free. But there are so many people, like so many people, who will pretend like they like people in this community just to, you know, get into leagues that might have a little bit more clout. And I use a little bit more because at this point, most league branding is dead. It really is. Like APA is like the best branded at this point, and it's not by a ton. And it's not a diss on APA, it's just more so on the format itself. Just individual league identity is dead because of how much it blurs together and how little variance there is in the league formats, and that's just how it is. But even still, even with like more creative leagues, you know, if you get more creative people, it's mostly a content creator thing. It's not the league, because also not every viewer is gonna watch like 16 coaches. That's just not how things work. You don't watch every single person in like that big of a collaboration because it's a huge obligation. Even if everyone's draft videos were 15 minutes in a 16 coach league, that's about 4 hours of content every week to watch just to keep up to date with everyone's sides. Or even if you watched like every match, that's still 2 hours every week, assuming every video is kept to 15 minutes or less. It's about 2 hours at a high end, which most of the time it's about 20, 25, even 30 at times, even with the land timer. Somehow it's 30, even longer for the very rare occasions. But let's say with like 20, you know, that math goes up exponentially. You know, 20 brings it up, I think, so 20 times, It's about like, for 8 games, it's about like 2 hours and 40 minutes, I want to say, for 8 games. You know, some leagues also have more coaches in it. Some leagues in general, you know, you'll want to watch like multiple people who are playing against each other for the same game, because that sometimes does happen. Obviously, you know, if, let's say like Matt and I play a game, I know there are some people who like to watch both sides. Not to, you know, say that everyone does, and I get that most people won't, but I know there's some people that like to watch Matt who also like to watch my content, and I purely mention that because Matt and I have a fairly collaborative audience, I would argue. So sometimes there might be people who just want to see both. And well, that's even more of an obligation at that point, to rewatch the same game that you just watched from a slightly different perspective. So it's a huge obligation thing at that point to watching and truly keeping up to date with the draft league. So especially when people are doing multiple of them at once, it really kills league identity. And I think it's something, again, that I feel like just hurts a bit at that point. And there's so many other things, but I think in general, again, it really comes down to, I guess, the fact that the community that people see in uploads is not nearly what it is. And I think that definitely hurts a lot of also trying to just build an attachment, because, you know, people watch creators because they like the creator. They like what's being presented to them. And especially when you could really tell that an interaction is really shoehorned in there, for even just like as simple as mentioning that you're playing someone, you could, in my opinion, you can tell when someone's faking it or not. But I will personally say that I come in with the lens of having done this for so long. I feel like it's a point, and it also helps that I know a lot of these interactions very specifically. But the point is, though, is I feel like it definitely hurts, because you could, I know that Kelly also mentioned, like, you know, even in his video, he mentioned that, you know, he gets really hyped when he's playing someone who's a really good fighter with it. And I mean, everyone does. But you could tell when it's intended to be a really legitimate, you know, you are glad that you're playing this person. And for example, every time I play Matt and Josh, I get super excited in my videos. I always make a big deal about it, especially with Matt. Matt is by far the person I do it the most with. But if I'm playing like mid, you know, I enjoy playing mid. I don't say I wouldn't enjoy playing mid, but I don't necessarily give mid even close to the same amount of hype as I would for Matt. And you can tell the difference. And you can especially tell when someone just doesn't care about the person they're playing or whatever. And that's just bound to happen. But I feel like the fact that people try and act like they do, very poorly I might add, it's just, I don't know, it's hard to really sell that. It's hard to sell that lie, in my opinion, when you just really don't care about who you're playing or just don't like the person you're playing. And also, you can kind of tell as well where certain lines are drawn in leagues, when certain leagues will not add certain people specifically because of personal issues. And you can kind of tell, especially when like former coaches don't come back, you know, you wonder why, maybe they didn't, and just no one really has an answer for you. When no one has an answer for you, usually it's because something happened, you know, not much to it there. Or just, you know, when certain leagues are marketed certain ways, it's because they just don't want certain people in. And that's fine, that's not an issue with that. But it's more so when you try to pretend that there isn't an issue, like there isn't anything there. So, I feel like the whole thing basically comes down to, I think, trying to sell a lie is definitely a lot harder to do. Albeit, it can work, but you need to be actually kind of good at what you're presenting. And I feel like just a lot of people are not, in my personal opinion. Again, that comes from a lot of insider information and a lot of things I've seen over the years, whether it's in leagues like GBA. GBA has a ton of fucking insider issues when that happened, or like WBE had some stuff, you know. Even NCP, APA, at least I personally played in, have had behind the scenes issues, whether it's currently or in the past when I played in those leagues, or even before I played in those leagues. To be fair, I don't know, I can speak for NCP, but I know for APA, even before I played, there were definitely things that went on, which again, not going to devolve into. But point is, though, is that things are not as clean as are being put out. And I feel like, at least with, like, you know, Wi-Fi, again, there's not like the room to have that sort of drama in most cases. You know, just it's a lot more tame, I guess. And I guess, you know, it's not to say that, you know, every draft league is like that, because that's blatantly untrue. For example, I haven't really had any issues in at least BBL Showdown. I can't say I've had any issues. To be fair, it could just be me not knowing and being ignorant to the issues. But in general, I feel like there are definitely instances I haven't. I feel like even in Wi-Fi, there are instances I haven't. For example, there was a Wi-Fi league I used to play in called the IBA. It's not the IBA that goes on now. It was an old Wi-Fi league. Didn't really have any issues at the time. It was just a rather tame experience. LBC was a rather tame experience when I did that way back when. League that Kyle ran as the last battle circuit for the last Sword and Shield draft league. It was a rather tame league, actually. Nothing really happened drama-wise. And that's not to say that nothing really happens, but whether it's in the coach selecting process, the league itself, whether in front of or behind the camera, whatever, there's so many different things that go on that people will try and act like doesn't happen. That is very, very flagrantly happening. And I feel like it just, I don't know, it killed my enjoyment for the scene. especially after years of it and hearing and having so many people for some reason come to me about it, talking about other people, issues they have with other people, and also just even still just the dependency on, like, for example, Jenning, which to be fair got a lot better with mid-hosting bots. I won't act like it didn't, but just stuff like that, you know, it's just a lot of over-reliance on how I personally felt I was in the community. I just burnt out so quickly and just got so tired of people. And there's some people I still keep up with, like I'll go right ahead and say, you know, there are people I would love to record anything else with. And I guess I'll name the people specifically. Well, I'll name a few of the people. I'm not going to name everyone. But the people that come to mind, like Owen, for example, I love my dynamic with Owen. I wouldn't act like, you know, I'm going to go out and seek talking about draft with Owen. There's instances I might. But I just recorded a video with Owen, and I specifically reached out to Owen before anyone else. Even before I recorded with Matt, I was like, you know what? I would love to record with Owen about this, because we did stuff for the Sword and Shield DLC leaks, and I loved recording those with Owen. He was a great person to bounce off of, and I feel like we can bounce off each other rather well, albeit sometimes we talk over each other, sure, but that's bound to happen when you're both really excited about a topic, and no one's really perfect at that, I would argue. With Matt, I love streaming with Matt. I feel like we always have a great dynamic. It builds from just, you know, starting about the content and then just building into something else, whether it's from chat or just Matt and I randomly talk about something, and it gets into a really fun conversation. I feel like at least, I want to say 70% of the time, because I can't, obviously, you know, there are some streams that just aren't as enjoyable as others, and that's bound to happen, but I feel like 70% of the time it gets into just a really fun, like, podcast dynamic at this point with Matt. I love recording with Josh. I love just talking with Josh in general. There are other people, like, for example, that maybe I don't record as much with, but like Kurt, I feel like I have a good enough dynamic with Kurt. I feel like if I hopped in a call with Kurt, we could at least bounce off of each other, albeit maybe not perfect the first couple times, but I feel like I could in general. And there are definitely others, so again, if I didn't mention you by name, it's not to say that I necessarily write you off, but just ask, I guess. To be fair, I am also really, really, really picky. Like, even good friends of mine, there are people I just would not record with, and that's fine. Just more so the fact I don't know if they're good at recording stuff is really the best thing, and I feel like I'm just really picky about that. So really just about, I guess, making sure that it matches my very picky standards, and also just feeling like I can have a good call dynamic with them without either feeling like I'm overwhelmed or that I'm overwhelming them. But it's more so just like, I guess, a particular thing. And I feel like, again, if any of them or other people want to reach out, especially the people I mentioned by name, you're welcome anytime in this channel. 100% anytime you want. Anytime. But the point more so is that I feel like I've still kept in touch with a lot of people that I do Wi-Fi draft with, especially, like, you know, certain people more than others, sure, but there are definitely people I do, so it's not an issue with everyone in the community. It's far from it, but it's definitely enough of the community to where I feel like I'm just so done, whether it's through needing to gen for people, help with LAN, help manage stuff in the preseason, Photoshop, whatever, or even just interpersonal stuff. I'm just so done with it at this point. So just wanted to change. I feel like at this point I've rambled on into more things than I wanted to be honest, but at least it wasn't as bad as the fucking Luminescent stream where I went on for 2 hours. I'll link that down below if anyone wants a discussion, wants to listen to that, I guess. I will say right now that I went a bit hard on some things in that stream, but hey, if you're gonna click on that, I feel like you really at that point are desperate to know what I mentioned in that. And anyone I felt like I deserved to double, like, to explain why I said things to, I've already DM'd them. So, you know, it's not like a watching for a gotcha moment that I've already, like, I mentioned Owen, for example, directly, and I DM'd him immediately after. I was like, hey, Owen, I mentioned this about you, and I still stand by what I said, but I just want you to know it's not because I mentioned that specifically because I mentioned you by name, and I know that we have a strong enough relationship to where that won't sever our relationship. And so, you know, I link that specifically because I know it's not a gotcha moment. It's because if anyone really wants to know more, they can watch there. But I feel like I said enough there. It's chaptered off anyway based on where that discussion happened. But I think it's basically the summary. It's a good enough summary. And if you guys for some reason enjoy this, leave a like below. It's going to be very unedited, of course, but that's fine. Sometimes there's just videos that are better unedited. With that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I have a cool video I actually have planned tomorrow. I got the idea from good channel member Zeke0, which, speaking of, shout outs to our channel members being Zeke0, Josh aka Ultra Player, Mia, Rika Hoshizora, Randy Chappa, and Pokemon fan Majestic Xerdius. Your guys' support is greatly appreciated on the channel. And yeah, as I said, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you want to see more. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, peace out, guys.